of this bill, Remote Employment 2020 Bill 2020. Mr. President, the COVID-19 pandemic has changed the way we think about work. It has changed the way we do business, the way we live, the way we educate ourselves, the way we commute. And from the looks of things, these changes will be with us for the foreseeable future. The truth is, Mr. President, we have experienced a number of crises, certainly over the past century, and with these crises have come a number of ramifications that we have learned to come to terms with, Mr. President. How we respond to crises determines how we as a people will progress. And my mind is taken back, Mr. President, to the First World War. And I believe it was the Greek philosopher who made the statement that necessity is the mother of invention. And for that period, which was perhaps the greatest crisis in modern history at the time, we would have seen a number of innovations, a number of inventions that persons felt it necessary to create in order to execute that great conflict. And some of those inventions are still with us today. Some of those innovations are still with us today. Drone technology, Mr. President, is a creature of the First World War. The zipper, the simple zipper that we use on our pants, on our clothes, a creature of the First World War as well. Mr. President, even stainless steel, which was used primarily to make guns, in the manufacture of weapons, is today something that we cannot live without. And these things came out of the necessity born out of the First World War. And the Second World War as well, Mr. President. You would have seen the advent of penicillin, which is the antibiotic that is still used today. You would have seen the advent of the first computer. And most importantly, or just as importantly to Barbados and tourism, was the advent of the jet engine, because a lot of persons do not see the connection between the jet engine, the creation of the jet engine, and tourism. During the 1950s, when after the war and Americans were back to work, Europeans were back to work and had some disposable income to use, they looked towards leisure travel. Leisure travel came out of the 1950s. And though most persons would have gone, especially from our source markets, would have gone to Cuba, which was right next door, and some of those closer territories, the Bahamas and so on and so forth, the jet engine allowed persons to fly in much further distances over a much shorter period of time. And that is what gave rise to tourism in this Caribbean and other places in the world, Mr. President. So out of the war came technology that we still enjoy and benefit from today, Mr. President. And in a sense, this coronavirus that we are now navigating through is no different in terms of its devastation and its impact on the world's economy, on the social and political landscape of countries as those two previous wars, Mr. President. It's no different. But how we as a people respond to this is what will make the major difference. And when you think of the shock that the coronavirus, the COVID-19 pandemic has had on the world, I can think of no area more acutely affected than the education sector, for example, where 1.9 billion with a B children, 1.6 billion children were impacted in terms of were out of school as a direct result of coronavirus. That represented 90% of all school-aged children in the world. In the world. And we've seen a similar impact on economies. But we have also seen at the same time a rise in the use of certain technologies. Overnight, Mr. President, Microsoft Teams, Zoom, Google Classroom, all of these names that were around for a while in some cases became essentials, became household names, not only in Barbados but all over the world. All over the world. But what that technology also made clear to us, that there were persons existing and living comfortable lives in this world who depended on technology alone for their survival. And there were persons who were what we refer to as location independent, who, as long as they were linked or had access to internet connection, could function as if they were in their office or at their workplace, Mr. President. And what this bill seeks to do in terms of inviting those persons here is to more or less flip the script of leisure tourism that I discussed earlier that started in the 50s. Flip the script. Where we now are inviting persons to come here to work and then go home, back home for vacation. So we're flipping the script in that sense. You come in Barbados and you relax, you work for a year if you need to. Could be less. But then you go home to have your vacation at home. So it's innovative in that sense. It's almost like a paradigm shift in the way we look at tourism in the region. And I think that's a pitch that a lot of these territories that are following us will take. Where person, you live here, now you escape the COVID, you escape the hustle and bustle of the big city. You come and you relax in Barbados on our beaches, in some of our more idyllic, more scenic surroundings. And then when you're finished, you can go home to your city life that you're accustomed to. But Mr. President, it's not only that we are inviting persons here, we're also creating, we now see opportunity to create more opportunities for entrepreneurs and persons like that to develop and build out a product that's uniquely Barbados, Mr. President. I can think of what we would call a business center, because the assumption is that persons will come and they will be on the beach, or they will be in a room, or they will be in a hotel or a house, and they will work from there. But the reality is that when these persons who are these persons who work, who are independent location independent. When they come, they usually form communities. They work together. They meet and they socialize together. And the reality is there's some areas where they may still need some amenities here in Barbados that, yes, they can do most of their work from their laptop. Yes, they can do most of their work from their phones. But there's some other amenities that they may need in order to be more efficient in their work. Apart from the internet connection, they may need, even in this paperless world, they may need the print. They may need a base screen. Every place they go, they may not necessarily want to take their laptop. They may not be able to work efficiently from their phone. So they may need a hub where they can go and hook up to the internet or log into the internet and work from there. If you look at some of these persons who, in places where this is commonplace, you'll see that they're what we used to refer to as internet cafes. Now, you don't see internet cafes in Barbados anymore because a lot of persons are now don't have access to internet in their homes, so they don't need to go into town like before to these internet cafes that we used to see all over the place. But now there's a possibility now where we can, and I think it was Senator Nurse who alluded to it, that hotels would include packages. Maybe within those packages you may include facilities very similar to an internet cafe where a person may be able to go and not only work but also socialize, because yes, a lot of them may work within their own cocoons, within their own spaces quietly, but there's still that opportunity for them to socialize and to form little communities even within the hotel or within the city of Bridgetown. So we need to have those, so there are opportunities for persons to build out that aspect of the infrastructure in Barbados, because you may find that you may need that if persons are coming here for a year, they may not want to be fettered well, they won't be fettered in a sense, but they may not necessarily want to have to walk around with hardware in their hand. They may want to just pop in sometimes here and there and use the facilities, but as long as those facilities are there. There's a barber shop where I used to frequent, and part of that barber shop there was a small, more or less internet booth or station, and persons would often come off the ship and come to that barber shop just to use those computers. Just use those computers. Of course, those persons would have traveled with their computers, but when they're walking around the city, they don't want to have to carry around the way, so they would just pop in. So we can create, even in our stores, a little space where persons, if they're shopping, they may still pop in, go online, check their charts and their graphs, and move from there. So there are opportunities for persons to make a living in non-traditional ways. Non-traditional ways are ways that we would have turned our back on in the past, but now because of the advent of COVID, because of the advent of the freelance worker, location independent worker, we can now look back at some of these things that would have worked in the past in order to maintain our competitive edge in this relatively new area. Mr. President, my contribution to this particular debate will not be long. What I mainly wanted to say is that as a country, I believe that we are going in the right direction. We have responded to the shock, the crisis that we have found ourselves in. We have responded to the new direction in which labor is going, where persons are more or less moving towards a more remote type of work and lifestyle. In fact, according to Forbes, in the United States, over 50% of persons are already working remotely. And it was said here, but it warrants repeating, 9 out of 10 of those persons said that they would never go back to working from an office if they had the choice. In Europe, that number moved from 7.7 to 9.8 in percent of persons in the space of 1 decade. So you're seeing an uptick in the amount of persons who are working remotely, and that study was done in 2018. So you can imagine how that number would change now in 2019 and 2020, sorry, now that there's COVID. That was 2018 before the advent of COVID, and remote working was still on the rise. So it's something that we're going to have with us for a long time. And I really hope that even though we would have discussed the whole economic models in the past where knowledge would be transferred, and that did not necessarily work out the way we would have wanted it to work out in the past, I really hope going forward that perhaps some of this knowledge that will come with these new workers will be transferred to some of our people, and we too as Barbadians can engage in this type of work from our homes as well, as a new area, a new sector to be built out in this country where we too can benefit from the knowledge that will be transferred as persons come into the country. And one last thing too, as I said before, they chose to come here, and there's no reason why they would not choose to use the services that are provided here. There are persons here who are pretty techno-savvy. There are graphic artists here. There are videographers here. There are a number of persons here who can provide services of that nature to these new workers if they position themselves properly. So I'm encouraging those persons in here, my voice, to position yourself so that you can more benefit from this initiative, because it's by far one of the most forward-thinking, ingenious moves I've seen in the region in a long time. And I'm not surprised, Mr. President, that so many persons are trying to either back raise us, as we say here, or undercut us, because they see the benefits that could be accrued from this particular initiative. Of course, if you were listening to our Prime Minister from as early as last year, she was talking about the use of technology. So we were not caught flat-footed like some persons. Our Prime Minister understood, our leader understood the importance of technology in the 21st century Barbados. He understood it. And now we are seeing the manifestation of that brilliance and that leadership. That is one thing that COVID has taught us, is that leadership matters. So as I close, Mr. President, I just want to, like senators before me, congratulate the Prime Minister on her leadership in this regard. I have no doubt in my mind that this program, this initiative, will reap great benefits for this country, and that this will bring us out of the slump that we now find ourselves in as a direct result of this COVID-19 pandemic. With those few words, Mr. President, I'm obliged.
Thank you, Dr. Springer. The next call upon Senator Lisa Cummings.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak on this important bill before us. Mr. President, I want to frame my comments in the context of two main thematic areas. What is tourism versus what is migration? And the reason why I chose to frame my comments in this context, Mr. President, is because there has been a lot of misinformation circulating in the public space and even in this place at times, Mr. President, about what this particular initiative is. Yes, we are treating to issues relating to COVID-19. Yes, we are treating to ensuring the economy is jump-started. Yes, we are treating to the fact that the tourism sector has taken a pummeling and we no longer have air passengers or cruise passengers at this time coming into the country. We no longer have bums and seats or beds and heads. We don't have any of that happening at this, or heads and beds. But we have to be able to stimulate growth, Mr. President, because there are those even within this chamber who, if we don't do this, and if we don't treat to this demographic, will say, but where's the growth strategy? What is the government doing to stimulate growth? This is one of the things that the government is doing, Mr. President, to stimulate growth. And what does this mean? For the purposes of this bill, Mr. President, we are not treating to persons who are coming either as a permanent resident, they're not coming as a person who is applying for and being granted a work permit, they're not coming here as a migrant seeking to establish citizenship, Mr. President. They're coming here as a tourist. And I'm not aware, Mr. President, and certainly I have some limited experience being a tourist myself from time to time, arriving in any country and having anyone ask me who is a part of my party. I am not aware, Mr. President, of anyone asking me whether I am black, white, Christian, non-Christian, whether I have a partner, a husband, not as a tourist, Mr. President. And that is an important distinction that must be made here. We do not practice bigotry or discrimination when it comes to anyone, but more specifically in the context of this bill, that has no place in our characterization of the persons who are eligible to come to Barbados as tourists for the period of 12 months to live and work in Barbados while maintaining their natural citizenship, their right to work, and everything else, payment of taxes in another jurisdiction. And I want to make that distinction up front so that there is no attempt to create mischief and misinformation in the public space about a bill that seeks to create a new category of tourists. Now, why is this important, Mr. President? This is important because for many years, many people who have served as pundits, political actors, economic actors, persons in the public space who have spoken about the need for Barbados and other countries like ours to diversify away from tourism, Mr. President. They have talked about, what are we doing? Tourism is our main foreign exchange earner. It is our main employer. What are we doing to move away from tourism? Now, I found in the process of preparing for this study, Mr. President, for this presentation, a study that was done in 2015. It's called Tourism and the Barbados Economy. It was done by Dr. Brian Francis, Micheline St. Juste, and Dr. Justin Robinson of the University of the West Indies. And it raises some interesting points, Mr. President, that I want to raise here today, but there's one particular paragraph that I want to read. It says, in the growth and development strategy for Barbados in 2013, it acknowledged that the performance of the tourism industry was volatile and suffered an annual average loss of 1% due to challenges in the external economy. Due to an estimated sharp increase in the quality of the villa rooms, the industry realized some success in the area of villa tourism, which now accounts for over 40%. But this is a key thing here that I want to raise. The designation of aspects of Barbados' tourism product as World Heritage Site heralded the diversification efforts that were being undertaken, among others, in the tourism industry. And this provided a perfect avenue for full diversification of Barbados' tourism market. This was a 2015 study, Mr. President. And I say this to say that there has been for a long time a discussion in our country around the need for diversification in the tourism market. And we have seen in our partners, whether it's BTMI, BTPA, BHTA, the Ministry of Tourism, whoever it is, Barbados Port, Grand Island International Airport, we have all benefited from those diversification efforts, Mr. President, at a policy level. What we are discussing here today, Mr. President, is yet another attempt at Barbados not just responding to the immediate dynamics of the COVID pandemic, which is before us, but if you put it in its broadest policy frame, it is also a continuation of Barbados' efforts under this administration to diversify the tourism product. And that is something, Mr. President, that is to be lauded, and I think is something to which I give my full support. I want to raise, Mr. President, also another element of diversification of our tourism product, and it was spoken about also in this study. It talked about the diasporic tourism market, and it spoke to the opportunity that Barbados and countries like small island developing states had to be able to tap into tourism in your diaspora. Now, one of our senators who happens to be the leader of government business and the Minister of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade, and others who have been participating in an initiative which was mentioned, I believe, by Senator Greenidge, the Regathering Initiative, are engaging in what Dr. Keith Nurse in a 2015 study called diasporic diplomacy. Now, Dr. Keith Nurse, in his study in 2015, he talked about some of the challenges that many small island developing countries were dealing with as it relates to migration. And he said some interesting things. It was actually a 2017 study. It said that more than 40% of the population of Caribbean respondents, particularly those between the ages of 15 to 24, demonstrated a willingness to migrate. They were willing to leave their countries and willing to live abroad and work abroad. 28% of those between 25 and 64 were also willing. But it also made an interesting point. It said that in 2017, Caribbean small states had almost doubled, seeing an increase of over 187,800 persons in 1960 to over 346,000 in 2015 migrating outside of the country, and most of these were highly skilled workers. Now, Mr. President, if you think back to COVID-19 and we think back to the policy that Barbados undertook as it relates to Barbadians returning home, we welcomed Barbadians from wherever they were to come home. Under whatever circumstances, and we spoke about it in this place, Mr. President, we said to Barbadians, this is your home. Our Immigration Act says Barbadian citizens are entitled to come home, and we welcomed them home. But up comes COVID-19, Mr. President. These are 2015 and 2017 studies that I have just quoted. Here we come now in 2020, and we have a COVID-19 which decimates the global economy, which now contemplates people staying at home, remaining in your home space, and working externally from there. Many of us have worked from home for a few weeks, starting in February. Many of us went into lockdown and worked from home for several weeks in March, and many people are still balancing between working from home and going out to the office because a new normal has emerged here in Barbados. Why was that? Because you now have mandatory government quarantines which require people to stay at home. Mr. President, does this not create an ideal opportunity for us to, one, diversify our tourism products so that we have this remote work created here in Barbados where people from all over the world can come here, but also, does it not create an opportunity for our Barbadian diaspora, who have been the beneficiaries of our diasporic diplomacy in such large numbers, more of our Barbadians living abroad than living at home? Does this not create an opportunity for them, quarantining in place, working from home in place, to have the chance to come back to their homeland safely and live and work in Barbados for the period of 12 months, while retaining their status abroad? I think this is what we're talking about when we talk about diversification